name to this channel, and we're just a couple of cohorts here talking about the future of our world and the future of and the current events, things that are actually happening in the world, and things that are changing the face of our very existence and our very freedoms.
Yeah. And what I just wanted to, this has been a topic. The topic I want to talk about today. Well, I'm going to start with this. I'm going to tell you a story. In 6 days, it's still the 14th today. In 6 days, our Jewish cousins are going to be celebrating a religious holiday, and it's the holiday called Purim. And if you happen to know any Orthodox Jewish people, you'll know that their kids dress up. It's like Halloween. They dress up in costumes, and they pass out candy, and they have a rip-roaring good time because they are celebrating. And the thing that they're celebrating, and it goes back thousands of years, goes back to the time when they are under Persian control. So we're talking as far back as 800 BC, 500 BC, around there somewhere. Let's call it 500 BC plus or minus. And anyways, I don't want to get bogged down in the details. They're celebrating the fact that a Persian bureaucrat gets the king to pass an edict saying that all the Jews will be massacred in the kingdom of Persia, which is a huge kingdom at the time. And shortly before it goes down, Queen Esther fasts, and she has the king over, and she gives him a dinner along with the guy who got the king to sign the issue, and he gets the king to not only repeal the edict that all Jews should die, but the king's so upset that he was manipulated by the guy named Haman, he actually has Haman hung, and instead of the Jewish people. So they're celebrating the fact that they dodged a major bullet. And the reason I'm bringing this up to tell a story is this is something that goes on throughout history, and it's regardless of who's in control. It could be a Persian emperor, it could be a Russian emperor or czar. The Russians had things called pogroms, not to be confused with programs, but pogroms, where the most vicious attacks on people simply because of their heritage and faith, right? Anti-Semitism. It goes. It came into Western civilizations. Say what you want about the Germans, they had Western civilization. Western civilization is defined as Greek philosophy, Roman law, and Judeo-Christian values. And even in Germany, Europe has historically, from the Dark Ages up until even now, they've grappled with anti-Semitism, and the whys and the wherefores there. Catholic Church takes some responsibility, but it's ingrained in the European psyche. I don't know 100% why. I wish that they could do better, but they're very susceptible to it. But the point I'm driving at, in America, historically speaking, we have not had the same problem as the rest of the world. And we're going through, or the door is opening for a future dark age for America. And what I mean by that is, since the 1960s, for sure, the civil rights movement, America has been very aware and very sensitive to bigotry in all of its forms. Bigotry against Latinos, bigotry against African Americans, bigotry against Jews, bigotry against the others. There was a time when we were not so good at that, and we've made massive strides. It's against the law to have a slave, regardless of the color of skin or gender in America. We've come a long way. But my point being is, we're beginning to backslide. And the Omar, the Congressional Black Caucus is that page up? Yeah, okay. The guy here in the corner, the guy here at the bottom here, that's his name is. He's a minister. He's the minister Louis Farrakhan.
Yep.
He belongs to an organization called the Nation of Islam, based out of Chicago. They are an offshoot of Islam. They were founded by a guy named the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who claims to have receiving revelations, and this is part of their religious belief that way long time ago there were only black people, and then a mad scientist monkeyed around in his laboratory and created white people, but because he created them, we're not human beings, and so you have this body that
science experiment.
Yeah, a scientific experiment gone awry. White people were created. They don't have souls, so they're so all of a sudden these demons were able to possess these bodies. So you might hear the term white devil. That's Nation of Islam lingo for white people, but they actually literally, if they're true believers, right? If they're really following the teachings of the Elijah Muhammad, they actually really believe that white people are human bodies possessed with demons. We're white devils. He is a full-blown racist. And furthermore, he doesn't just hate whites, he hates Jews. And he has made a lot of statements about Jews this and Jews that. And here's the thing. The media has a bias, and this is one of the problems. Here's the problem with bias. This all kind of coming together. The problem is this. If the media is got a vested interest on, well, we want the Democrats to win, we want the Republicans to lose. So if there's anything ever, not ideal for our Democrat candidate, we're just not going to report it. So, for example, there are pictures. If you can slide down here, there are pictures of Obama hanging out with Farrakhan in 2005. It's not on this. It's everywhere. And when Obama's running for office, the mainstream media said, you know what? We understand that this is going to make Obama look bad. This will hamper his ability to be elected president. So we're just going to sit on this. Now, after he served his full 2 terms, then all of a sudden, look at this. These pictures have surfaced of Obama hanging out with Farrakhan. And the point I'm driving at here is because Farrakhan because Obama never paid a political price for hanging out with Farrakhan, there seems to be no political price for hanging out with anti-Semites if you're on the left.
Right.
Now we have the representative, what's her face, Omar, whatever. I just call her Representative Omar, out of Minneapolis. She's a Somali. And I have no problem with that. This is what America's all about. I don't care what color skin you is. I don't care what language you were taught at your birth. Come to America, learn English, and the sky's the limit. And you want to become an elected member of Congress? Well, more power to you. So Representative Omar is now she's a member of the House of Representatives, and she has been caught on more than one occasion making very disturbing statements that the Jews have control. Israel has control. The Jews have the Svengali effect of able to hypnotize the nation to support Israel. And if you're a Jew, you can't be a good American because you have dual loyalty. All of these canards, all of these things that have been said in the past that have led to pogroms and even Holocaust. The seeds have been planted, is the point I'm driving at. And now, not just planted, they're beginning to bear fruit.
Yeah.
The press passed on Obama. They didn't hold his feet to the fire. He had no accountability. The seeds were planted. And now the fruit is happening. We have representatives now that are in your face anti-Semite. Now, it did break. Hey, this Omar chick has said some very disturbing stuff. She gave one apology, but it wasn't an apology. It was like, I had to say I was sorry because it's all about the Benjamins and the Jews are pulling the strings. So I had to say I was sorry, but I'm not really sorry. Well, Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House, decided, hey, we've got to save ourselves as a party to say to the country, this isn't who we are as a party. right? We're not fascists. People are entitled to free speech. You can think what you want to think, but we're going to censure her and her statements so everyone will know that as a party, we don't agree with this. Well, it went to committee and it failed in committee, and it went from censoring Omar and her anti-Semitic speech to we think all hate speech is wrong. So we think we condemn anti-Semitism and we condemn Islamophobia. And the subtle thing there is, Representative Omar, she's a Somali. She is Muslim. She wears a headscarf. So if you criticize Representative Omar for her anti-Semitic beliefs, you happen to be the bigot because that makes you an Islamophobe. See how that works? She's insulated because she is a protected class. She's a Muslim, and she holds her beliefs, she says, because of her cultural heritage and her religious beliefs. The Quran is very clear. The Quran is very clear. You can, again, cite all the verses about, hey, it says you have your religion, I have my religion. Why can't we all just get together and hold on? And it's there, but they're superseded through what's called the law of abrogation. Of the angel Gabriel tells Muhammad, if I give you a commandment that contradicts a previous commandment, you reject the previous commandment and you go with the new commandment. And the last revelation given to Muhammad is Surah chapter 9. And in that he tells his followers to kill the Jews where you find them, right? Mm-hmm. So part of her cultural and religious beliefs. And the Democratic Party said, hey, if you criticize her, you're the bigot, you're the racist. And my point being is, as a nation, we're losing the ability to identify. Well, not quite. And now, if everyone listening wants to go back with me to 2016, Trump's running for office. It's still the primaries. It's early in the primaries. It's anybody's game. Everyone's got their money on Jeb Bush. And so some reporter thinks it was some southern state primary was days away. I forget which southern state it was, but some Republicans, some reporter says I'm going to get Trump with an aha. And I'll be honest, this for me was not a shining moment for Trump. And the question was, David Duke has endorsed you. What do you have to say about that? And Trump's response is, David Duke, who's David Duke? I'm completely lost. What's a David Duke? And then everyone, the press used the terms dog whistles. Oh, Trump didn't reject David Duke. The correct answer to that question for Trump should have been the exact response Reagan gave in 1980 when David Duke said, I endorse Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan's response was, I reject David Duke's endorsement. I don't want his endorsement. If you're offended by that, I don't want your vote. Now, the reason why Reagan said that is because everyone knew David Duke was a member of the KKK. Not just a member of the KKK, but he was a grand wizard of the KKK. David Duke hangs out in Iran. David Duke and his pantheon of boogeymen out there, he's no fan of African Americans, to be sure. Again, remember the KKK, you gotta, that's black people are on your list. But David Duke has done his analysis and he thinks the Jews, Israel, the Jews, are a greater threat to the world than people of color. So David Duke going back to 2016, the press tried to construct a narrative that Trump refused to point blank reject David Duke, and that was dog whistle, which is, dog whistles, they hear at a higher level. So he's blowing this whistle that you and I can't hear, but the racists can hear. So he's blowing this dog whistle saying, hey, I can't say I'm a racist, but all you racists out there, you vote for me because I'm a racist. And again, there's no proof. And so it's dog whistle. There's no proof that he's a racist, but we're going to say that it's there. You just can't see it. You can't hear it. But for those of us in the know who can interpret this and know better, we're telling you he's a racist. So the standard for the press in 2016 for Donald Trump, he's a racist because he point blank did not reject David Duke in it categorically, period, end of story. Well, now jump forward to 2019. It's 2019. David Duke from Iran tweets, hey, this Elmar Omar gal, this Representative Omar, is the best representative in the House of Representatives because she's calling it the way it is. She's dialed into the truth about those Jews. Okay? No one in the mainstream media has said a word about this. No one has said a word because the narrative is, well, we want the Democrats to keep the House in 2020, and we want them to get the Senate in 2020. So we're just going to ignore, again, the standard of evidence to prove that Trump is a racist is that he would not point blank reject David Duke. David Duke endorsed Trump. Trump said, what's a David Duke? He's a racist. David Duke has now endorsed Representative Omar as being the #1 representative to keep your eyes on. And to my knowledge, Omar hasn't come out and said, I reject David Duke. You know, she hasn't said a word to my knowledge, and neither has the press because it's a non-issue. And again, because the press is putting party politics above the truth, because the Democrat Party is putting power above the truth, more and more of these racist weeds are going to be growing in our body politic. And no one's hitting the alarm bell saying, whoa, 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 this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And it has me distraught because the Democrat Party, they tried to say, hey, you know, we're gonna censure Omar, and it morphed into we're just gonna censor all hate speech. It's all bad. And again, Islamophobia is also bad, so don't even think about criticizing Omar. Otherwise, you will be guilty of being an Islamophobe. And it has me distraught because the Holocaust didn't start overnight. The Nazis swooped into power in 1933 by a bare majority. They have a bare majority, and you know, once they got their majority, there went the free elections. As in, they had elections, they had a lot of elections, but they used number ballots, which means they could backtrack to who voted against them, and then bad things would happen to those people. You know, with their SS force. So we talked about this last time. You know, the SS and the SA, the stormtroopers, and Antifa now. Organized mobs showing up to your home and beating you senseless for going against the groupthink, right? And so when the Nazis first they started dabbling in, hey, we're going to be taking human life. They started with life unworthy of life. They started with the ill, the infirm, the mentally handicapped, the physically deformed, right? Which is kind of where I'm going in with, you know, we're not killing Jews today right now, and no one would stand for that. But we have decided that we're going to terminate Down syndromes, right? They give you a test, and if you say, "Oh, my child has Downs," well, I'm going to go ahead and go with the pregnancy. You get weird looks. Like, are you sure? Did you not understand? We just told you your child will be a Downs kid. We should abort this while we can. And most people are, but some aren't. And guess by the way, who aren't? By the way, it's people. We could use a fancy term and say it's the ethical monotheists who are saying, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. And an ethical monotheist is someone who really believes that there is a God and that he requires good of me. And part of that is murdering a baby is a bad thing. So you have practicing, true believing Christians who are saying, yeah, I'm still going to have that child because this is a gift from God, and I'm not going to murder this baby just because it's an inconvenience to me. And you also have Orthodox Jews who are doing the same thing. In Europe, it's the birth rate for Downs is dropping down to 0. I'm shooting from the hip here. As I understand it, it's sort of state mandated. Oh, well, the test came back. It's a Downs. We're just going to go ahead and terminate the baby, right? And this is one of the problems with anti-Semitism. One of the reasons for anti-Semitism in the modern world, not in the medieval world, it's sort of bookends in the ancient world and in our modern world. The medieval times, you've got a whole bunch of other things going on. If plagues would come through, and you have a bunch of peasants, uneducated peasants who were steeped in mysticism, and they're thinking, well, I saw a Jewish guy by the well, he did it, and so they'll kill, right? But we're talking the ancient world and the modern world, and what we have in common then is in the ancient world, pagan rites required what we would call naughty behavior. You had temple priestesses and priests who were in essence prostitutes, raising funds for the temple through prostitution. And depending upon what cult you belong to, it would be obligatory. You would mandatory go and engage in activities at the temple and pay the priest or priestess that serviced you, right? And the Jews would say, yeah, no, I can't do that. That's pagan worship. I worship a God. He's invisible. And one of his commandments is the seventh commandment, which means don't commit adultery. And then they would get weird looks like, what do you mean? Everyone else is doing this. This is what we do in this town. And they're like, no, I can't do that. Thank you very much. Funny little story that about 148 BC, the Jews actually do a revolt and against Antiochus Epiphanes, who's in the Seleucid Empire, all because Antiochus Epiphanes makes an edict that the Jews will sacrifice pigs in the temple, and a bunch of hardcore believers go, "Yeah, that's the straw that broke the camel's back," and they fought a war and they actually won. Right. My point being is, in the ancient world, the Jews felt this weird obligation of morality that conflicted with the norms, the social norms of the time, and they got weird looks. And then in return, they got pounded on pretty hard. Well, today in the modern world, you have true believing Orthodox Jews who are getting weird looks. And why are they getting weird looks? Just imagine if some guy and his boyfriend they go to an Orthodox rabbi and say, we Steve and I want to get married. Adam and Steve want to get married and want to get married in this synagogue. And the Orthodox rabbi is going to say, yeah, I can't help you. That's not going to fly here. We don't do that. Well, that's a lawsuit waiting to happen, isn't it? Right? And that's a modern day, right? It's a lawsuit. And you can threaten that congregation with a lawsuit, and they're going to say, well, we don't care. We actually have a higher law. Their term for God is to not be blasphemous is Hashem. They'll say, there's Hashem's laws, and then there's the laws of the state. And when the two conflict, we're more concerned with what Hashem has to say. We're not going to perform a same-sex marriage, and you can sue us. And if by chance we lose, we're still not going to comply. And then that's causing tension because it's a constant reminder of, yeah, you guys can change the laws and you can brainwash a whole generation that this is all good and cool in the gang, but it's not going to change the fact that there are people still saying, no, it's wrong, right? And I think that's one of the major issues is when you have people who have a different lifestyle, they're more, it's not about tolerance. We want tolerance. Okay, well, we're at tolerance. Homosexuality in all 50 states is no longer a crime. It's not a crime. It used to be a crime, right? And then it got gradually 25 states, and then little by little, and boom, it's not a crime to be gay in any state in the country. And so what we're saying, so you have people say, hey, I disagree with your lifestyle, but may you live long and be happy. That's tolerance. We can agree to disagree. I will tolerate you, right? But that's not what they want. They want full-blown acceptance. They're intolerant of your not accepting them, and it's like, no. We want. It's not tolerance we're looking for. It's full-blown acceptance. And so I see that as an avenue of greater tension coming. And then another thing that's going to have greater tension coming: abortion. Right? You have states now that are legalizing the abortion up to full pregnancy, full term. A woman's about to give birth to a completely healthy baby. She decides, yeah, you know what? I've decided it's going to cramp my style. Okay, well, let's terminate. Let's murder the baby. Oh, by the way, in the House and the Senate, the Republicans are trying to pass a bill saying, hey, if a baby survives an abortion, you now have a wounded baby outside the womb, provided medical aid. And the Democrats are saying, no, finish the job. We're not talking about a fetus anymore. We're talking about a baby that has been born alive, and they're saying, finish the job. That's infanticide, right? Now, some people are going to say, hey, it's the mother's right to choose. I myself wouldn't choose to do that. But who am I to say no? Who am I to say no to that? Well, there's a handful of people in the country who say, yeah, no, that's wrong. And that's basically, again, you're boiling down to your ethical monotheists. People who say, yeah, I answer to a higher person, and that's wrong. And I know from my personal experience, the Orthodox Jewish community is going to be one of those people. You can look at them silly, and you can say, well, your opinion's no longer welcome around here, and make them feel uncomfortable. They'll go, okay, whatever. It doesn't change the fact that this is wrong, right?
Right.
You can threaten them with a Holocaust, and they're going to say, no, wrong is wrong. And that is, in the modern world and in the ancient world, that's where the tension boils down to. They're not going to buckle to social whims. Couple that on top of the political world that we're living in. We now have two members in the House for sure. I forget the other gal, but she's famous for saying "f you." She referred to Trump as a mother effer, right?
Yeah, I can't remember either.
But so and I know ACO Cortez chick. She's Manson Labs. She's in the same boat where those four are definitely for BDS, which is boycott, divest, sanctions. That's targeted against Israel, and therefore the pro-Palestinian whole concept. And the things I want to say there is BDS is you cannot, if you hold to BDS, you can't get away and say, well, I'm not an anti-Semite, I'm not a bigot, I just think Israel has problems and we should boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. It's like, well, okay, let's talk about the civil rights, the human rights violations that you think are happening. And again, no state is perfect. States make mistakes. And it's okay. Now, Pepsi challenged that to the rape of Tibet. Are you also for boycotting, divesting China and sanctions against China? Are you, from this point forward, never going to buy another product made in China because of the rape that's going on in Tibet, which blows anything, any construction you can come up to of the horrors of the Palestinians at the hands of the Jews? It's nothing in comparison to what the Chinese have done to Tibet. And you do find someone say, "Oh yeah, we should also boycott China." Okay, it's okay. You're consistent. You see evil in China. You perceive evil in Israel. You want it to end, and you're willing to boycott and divest. Okay, well, you're consistent. But 99% of those who want to boycott Israel are either clueless to Tibet, and then when you bring them up to speed, they go, "Yeah, well, whatever. I'm not." And then you ask them, "Well, what about Kashmir? Are your panties in a bunch over what's going on in Kashmir and India and Pakistan? Have you decided which is the good side and which is the bad side? Because I guess they both can be bad, but they both can't be good. So one of them for sure is on the bad side. They may be both on the bad side, but have you taken a position on the moral the moral plight of what's going on in Kashmir?" You go, "Well, no, I haven't." But Israel. Why Israel? Well, Israel because it was created by the UN. We go, okay. Well, let's go back to Pakistan and India. So is Pakistan. Show me on the map where Pakistan existed before 1948. And the answer is it didn't. It was created whole cloth. But here's the thing. Show me on the map prior to 1947 where the state of Palestine existed. Show me in the archaeological record where they've got coins from the Kingdom of Palestine. Show me in the archaeological records, this is the ruins, this is the king of Palestine's palace. And the answer is you can't. The answer is because there's never been, have we talked about this before? Am I repeating myself?
No.
There has never been in the history of the world Palestine, a state of Palestine. Now, there was a window of time where on a map, part of that world was referred to as Palestine, but who was it and what were they doing? These are questions you will never get from, if you ask this to a millennial, you put a gun to a millennial's head and said, you got to answer this, or I'm afraid I'm going to have to blow your brains out. They would be dead because they would have no idea what we were talking about. The word Palestine comes from our Roman friends who come on the scene in that part of the world about 60 BC, or to our Jewish friends, BCE, before Common Era, or before Christ. Take what you like. 60 BC, a guy named Magnus Pompey. Pompey Magnus comes rolling through town. He sets up alliances. He makes alliances with a guy named Herod, who's married the last of the Maccabean princesses, and he gets set up as a toad to Pompey. Pompey goes into a civil war with Caesar. He loses spectacularly, is assassinated when he gets to Egypt. And the next Roman guy to go through that part of the town is Mark Antony, where he reestablishes his ties with Herod, who's also known as Herod the Great. That same Herod, if you've read the New Testament, who orders all the babies to be killed because he's told that the Messiah, the King of the Jews, has been born. That Herod, right? And so you go into the New Testament times. You go into this part of times. 70 A.D. The Jews of that part of the world revolt against the Romans. They revolt not once, not twice, but 3 times they revolt. The last revolt is 120 AD. If you look at the Roman map, if you were to like timeline this out, so your map is moving, the Roman Empire is expanding. It kind of reaches its zenith under Augustine, or Emperor Augustus, and then about 120 AD, the empire begins to contract. And the reason it begins to contract is because the Jews in Jerusalem, the Jews in Israel, revolted so many times they had to take so many legions off the line protecting the Roman Empire, the perimeter, that the Jewish revolt breaks the Roman back, and from 120 on, the Roman Empire begins to decline. Now, the Romans, to pay back they look at the Jews and think, you guys are ungrateful. We came in, before we were in, there was massive fighting between the powers that be, and the powers that be were the Seleucids and the Ptolemies and the Macedonians. 3-way fight. If you think of it in like wrestling terms, it's going on for 200 years, 300 years, since the death of Alexander, which is 323 AD. Since 323 AD, these 3 power groups are fighting over the same bit of ground, and when one of the 3 gets too powerful, the other 2 join in and stomp on them. And then when another one gets too powerful, the other 2 change. The alliances change, and so there's always 2 against 1. No one group can get over the other, and it's Rome. When they come in, they bring peace and stability to the entire area, and everyone's loving it for the most part, because with Rome, because Roman law, you get roads, you get law that everyone has to answer to. And hey, and if you play your cards right and you become a citizen, you're entitled to even more protection under the law. Most people loved Roman rule. I'll give you an example of this. When Hannibal attacks Rome, part of his battle plan, he is anticipating he's going to attack the boot of Italy, and you have all these. Rome starts off as a city-state, the city of Rome. That's Rome, and then Rome expands and takes over the entire boot of Italy. So you have Etruscans and this and that, people who have been conquered by the Romans, and so Hannibal knows once he gets into the boot of Italy, he's going to be hard pressed to get reinforcements. But he figures that's cool in the gang, because as I liberate these other groups, the Etruscans and whoever, from Roman domination, they're going to join my ranks, and I'll have the entire boot of Italy, and then we can march on the city-state of Rome, and we'll crush them. Well, his problem was he would come in and conquer, and then people would say, when are you leaving? Because we're not going to join you because we're loyal to Rome. They have a concept of citizenship. We actually have been, since the time our people were conquered, a lot of families have become Roman citizens. We like the law. We like the stability. We like the roads. You're a barbarian. Will you please leave? Right? So the Romans are looking upon the Jews as these ungrateful people who don't understand the civilization we brought them. And so in return, to stick it to the Jews, they named part of that part as Palestine. It's a Roman word to connotate a place where they were ruling over Jewish people. Now, why Palestine? For that to make sense, you have to understand a little bit of Latin. I'm going to give you everything I know about Latin. And here it is. Like in Chinese, the R and the L is a really hard concept for them. R and L, though, if you're someone who's not fluent English speaker, they'll mix their R's and L's because there's not that sound is not a common sound in the Chinese language. A sound that doesn't exist in Latin is the PH sound, like for phone, right? Phalanx. These are words that the Romans would go. They would try to say phone. They would say pone. An example of this would be when the Romans went up against the Carthaginians. The Carthaginians come from a group called the Phoenicians, Pho, Phoenicians. Well, if you pull out your history books, the Romans went to war against Carthage not once, not twice, but 3 times. And the history books call it the first, second, and third Punic Wars, Punic, Punic Wars. And the reason the history books call it the Punic Wars is because when the Romans would try to say, hey, we went to war with the Phoenicians not once, not twice, but 3 times, instead of saying Phoenicians, they would say Punic, right? They couldn't pronounce Phoenician. So going back to
weird.
So going back to the concept that in Latin, there is no PH sound, the Romans were looking to stick it to the Jews who were giving them problems and grief and sorrow. And so on the map, they said, who were the historic enemies of the Jews? If you're an Old Testament reader, you might know where I'm driving at already. But the historic, think of David and Goliath. Who was Goliath working for? He was working for an outfit called the Philistines, who are also cousins to the Phoenicians, but that's another side note we won't talk about. But so the Romans think we're going to stick it to the Jews, and on the map, we're going to name this ground after their historic enemies, the Philistines. But they can't say Philistines. They say, well, we're going to call it after the Palestines. We're going to call it Palestine. So there's never been a Palestine. There's been a Philistine. The Philistines were there. But here's the thing I want to drive at. If you could go to the West Bank, which is also known as Judea, right? That's it's Judea, Judea, Samaria. That's the West Bank, or you go to Gaza and say, who here is a Palestinian? Raise your hand. And then they raise your hand and say, so are you guys telling me you're Philistines? Because you do, if you go into the religious chronology, the Philistines were online before Abraham was online. They were online before Muhammad. And Muhammad is of the 12 princes of Arabia, which were Abraham had his wife Sarah. She wasn't conceiving. Sarah says, take my handmaiden Hagar, have a son through him. He has a son Ishmael through Hagar. And then Sarah, out of the blue, has Isaac. And then Sarah says, yeah, it's time for Isaac and Hagar, or Ishmael and Hagar to leave town. So Abraham says to Hagar, take the kid and go. But Ishmael, the son of Abraham, he has 12 sons. Those are the 12 princes of Arabia. Isaac has Jacob. Jacob has Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And then Jacob gets his name changed to Israel, and he has 12 sons, right? The 12 tribes of Israel. And the Arabs claim to be of the tribe, one of the 12 princes of Arabia. They claim that their heritage is through Abraham. And my point being is, if you people really are Palestinians or Philistinians, well, then you're not of the tribe of Abraham. So which is it? Are you guys Arabs? Are you of descendants of Abraham? Or are you Philistines? And oh, by the way, of all the ancient world, all the ancient cultures, there were Hittites, Amorites, Philistines, and Jebusites. And all of them are gone. No one today is walking around the world saying, hey, I'm a Philistine, or I'm a Jebusite, or I'm an Amalekite. They're all gone. No one knows who they are. They've disappeared. There's only 2 cultures from the ancient world that have the same self-identity today in the modern world. There's only 2. And I'll give you a hint. It's not Egypt. Egypt was overrun by the Arabs, 600 plus AD. The Egyptians now today speak Arabic. They speak Arabic, and they're of Arabic descent. They're not Egyptians, right? The Egyptians are somebody else. They're gone. They're overrun by but my point being is there's only two cultures from the ancient world that are still alive today and self-identify, and one are the Greeks. Greeks have been around for a very, very long time. They still speak Greece. In Greece, they speak Greek, and there are the Jews, and they speak Hebrew today, right now, in Israel. So going back to the concept of Palestine, it never existed. It never existed, historically speaking. Oh, by the way, on that patch of ground, there have been 3 times in world history, from the creation of the world today, there have been 3 times that patch of ground has been controlled by the people who live there. And the first time it was controlled by the people, I mean, so for example, the Egyptians controlled that ground, the Hittites controlled that ground, the Babylonians controlled that ground, the Persians controlled that ground. There have been many times where occupying forces from another place controlled that patch of ground. And the first time that patch of ground was controlled by the people living there was Israel under the kings, King Saul, King David, all the way down to when the kings are the kingdoms, the North Kingdom, the South Kingdom is overrun by Babylon. And then it goes to Babylon, and then it goes to Persia, and then it goes to the Greeks via Alexander the Great comes in, and then he dies, and then the Seleucids, and after the Seleucids, it's the Romans, right? So the first time it's ever been independent ever was under the kings of Israel, and then there's a window. It starts in 148. I mentioned it earlier, and we're coming back around to it. In 148, the Jews living in Israel overthrow their overlords, the Seleucids, and they form what's called the Maccabean kingdom, because it's the family of the Maccabees who are Jews. They're controlling that patch of ground, and they control that patch of ground all the way up to, they're still controlling it when Pompey Magnus comes in, but they're beholden to the Romans, and then by the time Augustus comes online, they're point blank subjugated to the Romans. So there's a small little window of time when the kingdom of the Maccabees was up and running, and then it goes to foreign powers again, the Romans, and then you have the Crusader kingdoms, and then you have the Seljuk Turks, and the Seljuk Turks are going to morph into the Ottoman Empire. And the Ottoman Empire at 15 whatever is going to go all the way up to the end of World War II, which is 1918. 1918, World War II comes to an end. Oh, sorry, World War I comes to an end. The League of Nations divide up the world. And Israel, what is Israel today, is given to the British. And now this is where the word Palestine comes back in again. Now the British, like all Western European countries, they're government officials are classically trained and educated. They can read Greek, they can read Latin. And all of their ancient world map texts show that part of the ground as being Palestine. Again, who wrote? So here's an example. Why is Spain, if you go to the country Spain in Spanish is Española, right? Why is it called that? Well, it's called that because if you go to the Roman maps, because they mapped the world as they knew it, they called it Español, right? They named it Español. Why do we call the Germans? Well, because the Romans said this is the Germanic territories. They named the Germans Germanic, right? That's where the term it comes from. The Romans. Why do we call Italy Italy? Well, it's because the Romans called it Italy. Why do they call the continent of Africa Africa? It's because that's the name the Romans gave it. Scipio, the first general to go up against Carthage, he gets destroyed. The last battle that Hannibal fights is in Carthage. It's on the continent of Africa. Scipio's son goes in to fight Hannibal. He wins, and he is distinguished from his father as Scipio Africanus. He's the guy who went to Africa and became victorious, Scipio Africanus. So my point being is, it's now in the 1920s, and the British have control over the Holy Land, and they're educated men. It's like, oh, we're going to call it Palestine. So this is where it gets even more crazy. And is this boring you?
Not at all. Okay. Not at all.
So this is where it gets really crazy. We got to wind the clock back a little bit to the 1870s. In the 1870s, the French and the Germans go to war. It's called the Franco-Prussian War. The Prussians, they're going to evolve into the Germans. They blast onto the scene because the Prussians were 300 plus principalities, little bitty city-states here and there. They weren't organized, but they get organized, and the first thing they do is they slap Austria, because Austria is the most powerful German-speaking country. And the Prussians come online, and they just smack the Austrians around, and the whole world goes, whoa, that came out of nowhere. And then from that point on, the Prussians are itching for a fight with the French, itching for a fight. And they get their fight. And it's the Franco-Prussian War. And the Germans absolutely manhandle the French so severely that the French have to capitulate. They say, we lose. Napoleon III loses his emperorship. It's completely humiliating to the French. And at the peace table, the Prussians say, okay, this is in the Versailles, the mansion, the king's mansion in Versailles in France. They say, we're going to have a new emperor. His name is going to be Wilhelm I. You guys are going to crown him here, so everyone will acknowledge and we're going to be in Germany. And oh, by the way, you Frenchies are responsible for this war, so you have to pay for the war. And the Frenchies said, well, why are we responsible? He said, well, you guys were born. That's why. You exist. How could we not fight you? It's your fault for being you, right? Humiliate the French. Now, the French, after that's all done, they sit down and say, what the hell just happened? And so they're saying, well, obviously we had traitors in our officer class who gave our playbook to the Germans, and that's how they beat us so bad. Well, that was definitely part of – they're right. That's definitely part of it. There were officers in the French army who did give the battle plans over to the Germans. So that was one of the reasons the Germans just completely manhandled the French. So they start digging around, and they find the guys. Well, it turns out they're all connected. They all come from important families. So they can't be their names dragged through the mud. So they go through the officer corps, and they find a guy named Alfred Dreyfus, who's what? A Jew. They say, well, pin it on him. We'll blame the entire fail on him, and our honor will be restored. What's one Jew, more or less? So you have it's called the Dreyfus Affair, and he's being tried. And you have reporters from around the world reporting this. And the guy named Herzl, I'm shooting, Jewish guy from New York, Herzl, and I can't think of his last name right now. He's looking at this, and he's looking at the evidence like, my God, Alfred Dreyfus is an innocent man, but he's being railroaded for the crime of being a Jew. He's an innocent man. So he starts writing these articles like, hey, even a Jew in liberal modern-day France can't get a fair shake. What are we to do? And the answer was, it's called Zionism. And Zionism, for those who don't understand, it's a buzzword. It's a buzzword that OCA and Omar and the rest and Farrakhan, they'll all throw out and say, well, I'm not anti-Semitic. I'm just anti-Zionist. Well, here's how the Zionism worked. The Holy Land, Palestine, call it what you will. You have it's for the most part vacant. It's empty land. It's parts of it are swampy and parts of it are desert, and there's not a whole lot of people living there. And the proof of that is Mark Twain. He makes his money being a scribbler, and he's got lots of money, and he's like, I'm going to go see the Holy Land. So he goes to all the Holy Land. Before he enters Jerusalem, he meets with the Bedouins of the neighborhood. They said, hey, there's no law out here. There's no police or anything. You better pay us money for protection to make sure you don't get robbed while you're tooling around in the Holy Land. He's like, sounds like a fair deal. So he pays them protection money. And then he's in his observations, as I get there, I realize there's nobody here. The only ones who are here are the Bedouins on the outskirts. And he figured, oh, well, if I didn't pay them, they're the ones who would have robbed me, right? And the point I'm driving at is the place is vacant. There's nobody there working the land because it's either swamp or desert. There's nothing going on here. Now, again, who oversees it? It's the Ottoman Empire. Ottoman Empire is like any country. They have title. They understand it. They divided the land into subplots or whatnot. And so the reason I point that out is in the 1870s, it's Theodore Herzl. Theodore Herzl starts writing an essay saying a Jewish person can't get a fair shake, not even in liberal France. We need to have a homeland. So you had wealthy Jews, primarily in America, New York, whatever. Wealthy Jews are saying, hey, I got a good life. I'm happy where I'm at. But I'm willing to give money, and here's the key thing. I'm willing to give money to buy land. Land is for sale, and I'm willing to buy land legally, buy land, and then I'll give it to the Zionist organization. And the Zionist organization say, hey, any Jewish guy, family, person, individual who wants to go work the land that has been legally acquired, you can go there, right? And so land begins to be bought legally under the Ottoman Empire. People are selling for land. You have some landlord, I own the land, but nothing's coming from it. You want to buy the land? You're buying, I'm selling. Legal transaction. And in the 1870s, Zionism starts. Now, here's the crazy thing. So you have Jews coming into land that's been vacant, and they begin to work the land. If it's a swampy area, they're draining the swamps. And here's the benefit of draining a swamp. If you have a swamp in a warm climate, you've got ground ready to go. All you got to do is, regulate the water flow, and bam, you've got oranges, because they're going to, just make it so that adjust the water flow so that the oranges will grow, and bam, you've got oranges. And then if you're buying land that's desert, well, the trick there is if you get water to the desert, well, it's not a sun problem. You got plenty of sunlight, right? It's just a matter of if you can irrigate the land, things will grow. And so lo and behold, the land begins to prosper because you have Jews who are willing to come in and to work the land. And then now you have guys who have built up an orange orchard. Well, now the Bedouin's like, hey, I can continue with the Bedouin lifestyle, or I can go into town and work for the guy who owns the oranges because he needs workers. He's going to pay me money to schlep oranges around. Now you're building an economy, right? And so this is going on all the way up to the fall of the Ottoman Empire. And then, oh, by the way, I don't want to get too many side notes here, but now the British are there, and now you've got a land. You have Arabs that are living there, and you have these Zionist Jews. Now, this is the point I want to drive up for being crazy. You can read the newspapers at the time. If we can go back in Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine, and for those of you who don't understand that reference, if we could get into the TARDIS and go back in time to that part of the world, if we could go to Tel Aviv in 1920, and because we're with the Time Lord, we could speak all the languages, and we could ask, we got a room full of people. We have Arabs and we have Jews, and we could say, who here is a Palestinian? Please raise your hand. The people who would raise their hands would be the Zionist Jews. They saw themselves as Palestinians. We've come to Palestine. That's the name of the map. And most of them, by the way, were secular. A lot of them were communists. Not many of them were of a religious bent. They were trying to build a new world, right? Kibbutzes and whatnot. They weren't there because they thought it was the will of God. They were there because they wanted to escape persecution, anti-Semitism, and they wanted to build a country. And a lot of them were Marxists. And so in the 1920s, those who self-identified as, quote, Palestinians were actually the Jews, right? And if you go to the Arabs and say, well, what do you see yourself as? They would have said, I self-identify as either a Southern Syrian or just a flat-out Arab. I'm an Arab. If you would have said, are you Palestinians? They would have said, no, we hate the Palestinians. The Palestinians are the Jews, right? The term Palestine doesn't become a thing until 1964, when the Palestinian Liberation Organization comes online. It comes online in 1964. And when you read their rhetoric, they're always pissing and moaning about the West Bank. about the West Bank this, the West Bank that, blah, blah, blah. Well, in 1964, who did the West Bank belong to? The West Bank did not belong to Israel. It belonged. Okay, so let's go back to so let's continue this through. 1920s, you have the Zionist movement going on. You have Palestinians who are Jews, and then the 1930s come along. Anti-Semitism is getting way wrapped up in the Holy Land, Palestine, Israel, call it what you want. It's also getting wrapped up heavy in Germany. Now, you have a guy named the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. He's the Grand Poobah. He's the highest religious authority in Jerusalem, and he is calling for the murder of Jews. Now, the British war comes in 1939 war starts. So the British want to arrest the Grand Mufti because he's causing serious problems in a place that the British don't want a problem, because they got problems fighting the Italians and the Germans in Libya, and the Germans are making a move to go into Egypt, and the Grand Mufti is saying, hey, when the Germans get closer, we need to rise up in support of the Germans. And so the British want to arrest the Grand Mufti. Well, he gets on a plane. His name is al-Baghdadi. No, he's not. That's the current ISIS guy. He's the Grand Mufti. We can look him up. You can, anybody out there, just Google Grand Mufti and Hitler, because this is what I'm driving at. The Grand Mufti flees out of the British control, and he flees to Germany. He has a sit down. You know what? We can do that right now. I can show you what's going on. I'll share this. I'll share screen this. Give me 1 second here. Grand.
I got it. I mean, I've got him up here. If you look at the, is that no?
Let me go. You scratch. You. Did I lose you? Well, you go ahead and do it. Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. You can see him sit. He has a sit down with Hitler. He's having tea with Hitler. He's also chummy with. He's also chummy with Himmler, and he comes in and he says, "Hey, I got to get something cleaner. You guys are anti-Semites. I am an Arab. I am of Semitic descent. Do you mean Jews and Arabs, or is your thing just the Jews?" They go, "Oh, our thing is just the Jews. We have no problem with Arabs." He's like, "Oh, great. Well, can I spend the war here?" He said, "Absolutely." And it went so further on to that. He said, "Hey, listen. You guys are fighting a war. You're trying to kill Jews here. And I'm down with that completely. I have a never-ending supply of men who are more than happy to help you out." Now, here's where the Nazis really shot themselves in the foot, because they are racists. They said, okay, well, we'll take some. They could have tapped into way more than they did, but they raised an Arab division, an SS Arab division. I'm not making this up. You guys, I have a whole.
Well, I figured that, because they're just hypocrites. So I figured that, yeah.
Well, but here's the thing: they placed this SS Arab division in the Balkans, and the reason they put them there was Jews that hadn't been rounded up yet are running around in Europe, Poland to France to Italy, Hungary, right, Romania, and they know if the Germans catch them, they're going to put them on a train, they're going to send them to the death camps. So they want out. They want safety. And they're thinking, well, where am I going to go? I know I'll go to Palestine, where Jews have already set up shop, and they can't take a plane and they can't take a boat, so they're going to hoof it. They're going to walk it. And the Balkans, if you look on a map of the Balkans, you can see what's called the Bosphorus. It's a mile wide piece of water where Europe and Eurasia, where Turkey are separated, and Jews were crossing the Bosphorus, and once they made that cross, they could walk the rest of the way into Palestine. And they put these German the Arab SS units in the Balkans, and their sole purpose was to find any Jews trying to escape the Holocaust and send them back to the Holocaust. And they did it with zeal and vigor and enthusiasm. And so World War II comes to an end, and now the world is kind of like, wow, there was a Holocaust here. And you can see the man on the street asking your average person today here in America, and I don't know how many times he has to ask people to get someone who doesn't know. What has me infuriated is that nobody should not know. Every single American should know what the Holocaust was. But there's a small army of idiots out there, enough people to elect Omar and Cortez and company, they are oblivious so going back to the story. Here's the story: the world is racked with guilt, and Israel has already set up shop. You have Zionism that has already set up shop. Now, it's not completely the whole state of Israel, but the UN is formed, and the UN sends a delegation to Palestine to say, hey, we need to create a homeland for the Arabs and a homeland for the Jews. Now, the Arabs, their response was, well, we're just going to boycott that. We are not going to talk to the delegation at all, whereas the Jews talked to the delegation, and they came up with the UN partition. You have a country called Israel, and you have a country called Transjordan. Now, if everyone wants to Google on their maps, well, Transjordan, what do you mean Transjordan? I know, and a country called Jordan, Transjordan, Egypt, Iraq. Iraq was made out of whole cloth. There was never a country called Iraq before, never a country called Yemen before. So anybody who can, well, Israel was just created as a delegate. Yeah, well, a lot of countries were. Why are you only concerned about Israel being created that way? Could it be that you're an anti-Semite, or is it because you're just an ignorant buffoon who's following the lead of anti-Semites? It's one or the other, right? And neither option is makes you look good. But so you have a country called Transjordan. That, by the way, was the home of the Palestinian of the Arabs. Not because it's not Palestinian yet. Now, in 1948, Israel declares its independence from England. It's now the state of Israel. They are immediately attacked by all of their neighbors. Plus, they're attacked by Egypt
from all sides. From all sides,
north, south. The only way they weren't attacked was from the Mediterranean. So from the ocean, they weren't attacked, but they were because Gaza was controlled by the Egypt. So they're attacked by Egypt, Libya, Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, Transjordan, Jordan, and Iraq. You want to go into the details on this. If you don't believe in God, read that war. All indications were Israel was going to buckle. They were going to be wiped off the face of the earth. The rhetoric coming from the Arab legions were, we are going to turn the Red Sea red with Jewish blood. We're going to kill them all. And on that note, they said, we're going to kill them all. So the areas that were partitioned off to Israel, you had Arabs living in that realm. And the rhetoric from the Arab legions were, you might want to leave your town because we're going to come through and we're going to kill everybody. And it would be a shame if we accidentally killed you. So you had a bunch of Arabs who packed up and left thinking, well, I'll come back when the killing's done and I'll just take my house back again. You had a lot of Arabs who stayed, said, no, I'm kind of happy with this crazy thing called the State of Israel because they have, it seems to me, they're kind of a Western liberal democracy thing where freedom of religion and freedom of speech and freedom of the press. I get along with my Jewish neighbors. I don't have a problem with this. I kind of see this as a win. So what that means, what that translates to is you say, hey, did you realize that there are Arab Israelis today? Today, right now, there are Arab, and that's because their ancestors didn't leave. They stayed. There is an Arab Israeli sitting on their version of the Supreme Court. There are Arab Israelis that serve in the Knesset, their Congress, their parliament. They have every right because they are Israeli citizens. They're Israeli Arabs with full rights of citizenship because their people, their ancestors didn't leave. Now, when the war ends and Israel is left standing, the Arabs that fled, Israel's like, I really don't think you can't come back. You actually joined their enemies to try to kill us. No, you left. Now, the point I'm driving at, there's a sub-point here, but the point I'm driving at is Jordan wanted to attack Israel. In order for Jordan to attack Israel, Jordan had to go through Transjordan, the land that was set aside for the Arabs, right? And Jordan goes to Transjordan, attacks Israel, they lose, and Jordan falls back into Transjordan, where Jordan simply annexes Transjordan. The reason you don't see Transjordan on the map is because it ceased to exist. Jordan annexed it. They took it, whole cloth, said it's ours, right? Now, where was the screaming and yelling that, hey, the West Bank needs to go? No one said anything. No one said a peep about that. Not a peep, not a word. one of my personal. You talked about meeting famous rock and roll stars. My moment of glory for me, one of my most treasured memories. I went to a seminar where Yasser Arafat's personal lawyer was giving a lecture on how bad Israel was and da 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 da. And so it came time for question and answer time, and I'm raising my hand, waiting to get called on, and they get to me. By the time they got to me, it's like only one question. So, but I kind of snuck to it and said, well, you talk about, her whole presentation was the Israelis have an ideology of superiority. They think they're better than us. They think they're better than us. That was her whole point. And so it got to me. I said, well, I had two questions. My first question was, you keep dating the date of the occupation of the West Bank in 1967. Why don't you use 1948 when Jordan annexed Transjordan, the West Bank? Why don't you use that as a starting date for the occupation? So, but and then my next question is, you keep talking about an ideology of superiority. So the Palestinians have access to the most sophisticated bomb delivery system in the world. Something better than an F-16, something better than a cruise missile. What's smarter than a smart bomb? A cruise missile has a computer. It's a computer-guided missile. And what is more sophisticated than that? A human body. The Palestinians strap bombs onto people. The most sophisticated bomb delivery system the world has ever seen. And these human bomb delivery systems, when they get past the gates, where do they go? Do they go to military bases? Do they go to police stations? No, they don't. They go to restaurants, and they go to pizza parlors that are packed on a Sunday, the day after the Sabbath, packed with families, and they blow themselves up. You tell me why. How? And then her response to that was, well, if the Palestinians if we had F-16s, we would use them instead of people. I said, that's not my question. My question is, why do your people, when they get past the checkpoints, why are they not looking for military targets? Why are they blowing up buses full of people, families, restaurants full of people, or families, right? So going back to my point being is, the West Bank was annexed by Jordan. No one says a peep. 1964, the PLO comes online with the stated purpose of destroying Israel. That's their goal. They want to destroy Israel. Now, in 1967, you have the Six-Day War, and I would love to go into depth in that, but it's late, and we're going on now. But yada yada yada. We'll talk about it in depth in the future if you want to. The Israelis win this war in 6 days, and here's the crazy thing, crazy little detail. The Israelis are looking at war with the Egyptians, the Syrians, and the Jordanians. Now, the guy who's whipping the fire for this war is Gamal Abdel Nasser. He's the leader of Egypt. He sees himself as a pan-Arab uniter. Pan-Arab. I want to unite all of the Arab people into one group. Who was the last guy who was a pan-something or other? That was Hitler. He was a pan-German guy. I want to unite the Sudetenland. I want to unite Austria. I want to unite the Rhineland. I want to get all the German-speaking people into one group, right? Gamal Abdel Nasser and his hop-along, the guy who replaced him, Anwar Sadat, they got their start serving in that Palestinian expeditionary force, working for the Nazis during World War II. Gamal Abdel Nasser is a fascist. He's a Nazi. He's a Jew-hating Nazi trained by the Nazis himself, right? And so he's whipping up. We're going to go to war. He's using the same rhetoric. We're going to turn the Red Sea red with Jewish blood. Yada yada yada. Unbelievable success in the 6-Day War. The Israelis are dealing with the Syrians. They're dealing with the Egyptians. The Mossad being the Mossad, they tapped King Hussein's phone of Jordan. I don't speak Arabic and I don't speak Hebrew, but if you do, you could hear the recorded. You have Golda Meir, Prime Minister of Israel, begging. I think it's Golda Meir. She was I was pretty sure it's Golda Meir. Well, the Prime Minister of Israel is begging with the King of Jordan, don't attack us. We don't want to fight with you. We don't have no problem with you. This is between Syria announced before the war started that they were going to dam the Jordan River, which at the time was 90% of Israel's fresh water. And Israel said, if anyone were to dam the Jordanian River, we would consider that an act of war. So the Israelis are begging the Jordanians to not enter the fight. Well, Gamal Abdel Nasser calls up the Jordanians and said, hey, we've got the Israelis on the ropes. If you want any of the spoils, you got to join the fight. So the Jordanians, hearing Gamma saying, hey, this is almost over with and we're going to win, they jump in thinking it's going to be an easy win. Well, to their surprise, our Israelis bit smack them, and they bit smack them all the way back to the Jordan River and push them to the other side. So now the Israelis are left holding the West Bank, right? What used to be Transjordan. Now the war comes to an end, and these Arab nations go to Khartoum, Sudan's Khartoum, and they come up with what's called the three no's: no peace, no recognition, and no peace, no negotiation, we're not going to recognize Israel as a right to exist. We're not going to negotiate with Israel, and we're not going to have a peace. Well, the ceasefire.
So would you say is it fair to say that the 6-day war is the event that propelled this maddening philosophy, this maddening ideology that they should just all be exterminated?
Well, no, that's always been around, but it's.
Well, I know, but what I mean is forgive me. What I mean, what I meant was as far as like the modern day, is that something that really propelled it, or okay?
Well, yeah. So everyone from let's talk in one time now, from Obama to Omar to Cortez, they'll all talk about the 67 lines, and we got to go back to the 67, the pre-6-day war lines, but here's the point with this detailed explanation of history. The PLO came online in 1965. This is before the 67-day war. 1967, before the 6-day war. So the question you have to ask yourself is, if the PLO had a problem with Israel when there wasn't the occupation of the West Bank, which I refer to as Judea Samaria, what's the real problem? And if you listen to their rhetoric, you read what they write, their problem is Israel exists. That's what it boils down to.
Right.
And so the 67 lines is rhetoric used by anti-Semites to convince the gullible and uneducated that their cause is just. But it's not just. Because again, what was wrong with Israel in 65 when the PLO came online? Well, it's because Israel exists. When you read Hamas's charter, they're not just upset with the state of Israel. They're upset with the fact that there are Jews alive around the world. I mean, their charter calls for the murder of Jews around the world. If you have a Jewish friend here in America, just know Hamas is not going to be satisfied until the day comes that they murder your friend. I have Jewish friends. That gets me upset that some organization wants to murder my friend here in America simply because of who his parents were. Wow. It enrages me. It enrages me. But what has me even more enraged today, right now, is we have elected representatives who are shills, who are apologists for these savages. The PLO, now the PA, the Palestinian Authority, they are terrorists. And we have elected representatives in America today who say, hey, yeah, they're totally cool. Hamas is a terrorist organization. And we have elected representatives say, yeah, man, they're totally cool. They're it's all they're in the right. And it's like your moral compass is so
wrong
that you could look at a terrorist organization that wants to murder someone simply because of who their parents were or what faith they converted to, and you're down with that. How evil are you? And that's at worst. At best, how incapable of you of looking at evil and not recognizing it for what it is. Now, you might have fallen because you don't know history and you slept through your high school. Well, when I was a kid, this stuff was taught. I didn't sleep through it. It's not taught anymore because my daughters know it because I taught it to them because they have me for a dad, but they're not getting it in school. the narrative of, well, Israel is, it's problematic. It was created in, unfair or whatever, and the poor Palestinians this. And again, Palestinians, we've broken that down. The word, the country. Arafat was running around saying Jesus was a Palestinian. No, he wasn't. Jesus was a Jew. He self-identified as a Jew. Well, he was the son of God, but all of his followers self-identified as Jews, and they were Jews. And the Romans saw them as Jews. The Romans named it Palestine to stick it to them in reference to their historic enemy, the Philistines.
Mm-hmm.
But no, oh, by the way, earlier I mentioned this. Oh, there are coins. There are coins of, this dates back to the first kings of this coin dates back to the kingdom of David. This coin dates back to the kingdom of Saul. This coin dates to the kingdom of Jehoshaphat. It's there. There is archaeological proof that existed. There is zero evidence of the country nation of Palestine because it never existed. And even when it did on a map, it was to connotate where Jews were living. It can't be more clear than that. And anybody who says, "Oh, Palestinians, they have a flag," well, no, they don't. They have a flag, but it's a lie. It's based on a lie. It's based on a lie that's based in the hatred of Jews, and it boggles my mind. There are if you're a gay Palestinian in the West Bank or Gaza, and you cross over and get to the checkpoint and said, I'm gay and they're going to kill me, the Israelis will let you in. They will give you sanctuary because they know that if you're a gay person and you're outed, that the savages, your neighbors who are savages, are going to murder you because you're gay, right? There are over 10,000 illegal Arabs living in Israel. Now, per capita, Israel's got a population of, I believe, of 3 million, and it might be even 100,000. But the bottom line is there is not an insignificant population of Arabs living in Israel illegally. And my question is, if Israel is such a racist, such a apartheid nation, who in their right mind would flee to go live in Israel? An Arab living illegally in Israel has it better off than an Arab living in
Palestine.
Kind of like, why would someone from Latin America risk everything to get to America to have to live in the shadows? You don't have a social security number. They can be arrested at any time and deported at any time. What a horrible way to live your life. Well, actually, all of those things, all that stress is actually better than living in you name the hellhole of Latin America. And I have friends that are that way, and I've heard the stories, and I know the stress that they're living under. Law-abiding for the most part. They broke the law, they're here, but they drive. They work hard. They pay. They pay their taxes. We can talk about that. They're actually paying their taxes. The government allows for that. You don't have a social security number, but you want to pay your taxes because you want to be law-abiding. Okay, well, the government, we'll take your money, even though you don't have a social security number. It's called an ITAC, right? So they fill out the proper forms. They're paying their taxes, but they live under the fear that if they get pulled over, things could go awry, and next thing you know, they're being deported to not America. And that's a constant stress they have. But that constant stress is a better quality of life than the absolute horror show of where they've left. Places that are now in complete control of the cartels. But I'm getting off the point I want to talk about. You have Israel today, right now, is the only place in the Arab world where Arabs are free to speak their mind. They can go out, they can say whatever they want for the cameras because they know it's, and if you're gay, you can do it. And oh, by the way, the only place in that part of the world, in the Arab world, the only place where there's a gay rights parade is in Israel, right? If you have a gay rights parade anywhere else in the Arab world, you will be murdered. You will be murdered. So what has me so even more, if you're a woman having sex outside of marriage in the Arab world, The penalty is you're going to be murdered for honor killing. You're an honor. It'll be an honor. Your father or your uncle or your brother is honor bound to take your life, and you can just Google that if you don't believe me. Oh, we did a thing on honor killing. We did a thing. So
Yeah.
it is a reality. But if you're a woman in Israel, Jewish, Arab, Christian, doesn't matter, and you want to get busy with the man of your choice, you can. Right? And so I look at the left. I look at what makes up the left, the LGBTQ crowd, and all the different groups that come together. And I know that I saw once it was an anti-Semitic rally. They call it a whatever, just a get together of Democrats, flying their free flags. It was a gay rights parade. It was gay pictures from a gay pride march, and there was a group of gals, and they called themselves Dykes on Bikes. And this one particular dyke on her bike was waving the Palestinian flag. And I'm looking at that.
Are you kidding, right?
I said, you got to be kidding me. If you were to drive your motorcycle through and then you had a proper translation of dyke on bikes, so they into Arabic, so they knew what you're telling the world, I am a female lesbian and proud of it, and you drove that through the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, or Gaza, you would be murdered. They are murdering your lesbian sisters, yet you are waving a flag of Palestine. How stupid are you? Or how much hatred do you have to a Jewish country? Now, again, Israel itself is secular. The government is secular. But when they, those who have their anti-Semiticness, I think for that person, well, they're Jews, and Jews wrote the Old Testament, and the only reason that homosexuality is frowned on is because of Jews. I hate Jews because they're anti-homosexual. I hate them. Well, it's 2019. You show me anywhere in the world, even in Israel, where Jews are getting together and holding council, Sanhedrin, finding someone guilty of being homosexual, and then stoning them to death. It's not happening. It's not happening in New York. It's not happening in LA. It's not happening in Tel Aviv. It's not happening in Jerusalem. It's not happening. Period. End of story. But it is happening throughout the Arab world, and that's just a fact. And this, be it educational laziness from the schools to this or that, to people just, I want power and I'll do it and say whatever it is. The problem is anti-Semitism is on the rise. And on this one, you could say, oh, spending's out of control. You're right. Who's guilty? Well, the Democrats are guilty. Republicans are guilty. We got a broken system. Both parties are guilty on spending out of control. On this particular issue, anti-Semitism, you show me the Republican that's an anti-Semite.
Yeah.
And you know what? And if you do, guess what? I won't vote for him, and I won't send them money. But oh, by the way, if there is a Republican who's an anti-Semite, you rest assured that the press will tear him, rightfully so, to pieces, because we don't have room for hate, right? But we have verified elected officials, and they're not being called out, and the Democrat Party is making more and more allowances for this. It's only going to get worse and worse. When people are calling for the destruction of Israel, what do they think is going to happen? Here's another crazy thought too. You look at Israel said unilaterally to Hamas, take Gaza. We're just leaving. Israel was there for the longest time as peacekeepers, as they were in the West Bank. They were so going back to 67. The 67 war comes over. Israel calls up Jordan and say, well, we're going to keep Jerusalem because, read a history book. Jerusalem's important to us. But you can take the rest of it. This was not a war of conquest for us. This was a war of defense, and we don't want the West Bank. We don't want the Palestinians. They're not our headache. They're your headache. And the Jordanians said, hey, no recognition, no negotiations, no peace. And, oh, by the way, a little bit more of a little historical tidbit here. Have you ever heard of a group called Black September? I'm just curious. Have you?
I haven't. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Nope, that's okay. Well, Black September, they splash onto the scene. They explode onto the scene in 1972 at the Munich Olympics. A terrorist group infiltrates Munich. They capture a bunch of Israeli hostages.
This is in what year? 70?
1972. I remember watching this on TV as a kid.
Wow.
Scared the living daylights out of me, right? And 11 Israeli athletes wind up being murdered by these savages. And the Germans have a lot of culpability because they were completely inept. But German ineptitude is one thing, but even if they were inept, had not the savages broken in and taken hostages, no one would have died. The ultimate responsibility is to the savages. And a terrorist organization, they call themselves Black September. Well, why did Black September form itself? Well, before 67, right? So this is the Jordanians have Transjordan. A lot of Palestinians live in there. And the Palestinians like, well, why are we fighting Israel? They got themselves together. We want a country, we want our own homeland. Hey, there's lots of us here. Why don't we overthrow King Hussein and we'll just take over Jordan and Jordan will be our country? So they were planning to overthrow King Hussein. King Hussein found out. He sicked his army on him and he massacred a lot of Palestinians. I mean, a lot of them. And they had to flee. And so that was in the month of September. I forgot the actual year, but the bottom line is the Palestinian terrorist, the Palestinian Authority, the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, was so pissed at what King Jordan did to them, they formed an even more radical group out of the PLO, and they called themselves Black September. So Black September is pissed that King Jordan, King Hussein of Jordan, massacred a bunch of their brethren. And what do they do for revenge? What do they do for revenge?
Massacre back?
They massacre Israeli athletes. They kill Jews. And that, again, it's like, we're so pissed at what King Jordan did to us, let's kill some Jews because we're Black September. And that's the mindset. No matter what's going on, it's the Jews' fault. And that is the final. And that's where the danger comes. That was the same danger in Nazi Germany. Why did we lose World War I? We can have a long discussion with that. In the final analysis, Germany was on the offensive at the beginning of World War I. They went into Belgium. They went into France. And then the lines became stagnant. That's trench warfare. So the German lines got bombed at Verdun. They got and the Somme. They got bombed hard. But it wasn't Germany proper getting bombed. It was parts of Belgium. It was parts of France. The German people themselves never saw their homes bombed. And then the Germans, it's called a war of attrition. The German high command, look at the map. They said, well, the French and the British have so many soldiers, and we have so many soldiers. We have a little bit more than them because the Russians got knocked out early. So the Germans are putting all their effort on the front, and they go, well, we're dying at so many soldiers a month. They're dying so many soldiers a month. The math is in our favor. Eventually, someday, they'll bleed out. They won't have an army left, and we'll bleed out a lot, but we'll still have an army, and we're going to win this. And when it was that course of the war, President Wilson in America is trying to bring peace. There's 14 points of peace, and he has the Germans and the French and the English sit down and say, "Hey, I've got these terms of peace. We can bring peace to Europe." And the French and the English said, "We want this." Then Germans said, "Yeah, that doesn't work for us," because they were winning. It was a war of attrition, but they were winning. Then you get my wife is calling. I gotta call quits here shortly. Then you get the sinking of the Lusitania and the Zimmerman telegram. So bottom line is America enters the war, and the math goes crazy. Now the Allies, the French, the English, and the Americans have more soldiers than the Germans, and now the Germans realize we are going to bleed out before they are, and then that's why Germany sues for peace. So here's the paradox. The German high command knew they were going to lose, but they called it quits before any of the German people saw the horrors of war. So when Hitler was giving his message of we were stabbed in the back, we were winning this thing, and we were stabbed in the back by the Jews. It rang for the German people. It's like, yeah, we were winning. Why did we lose? We just out of the blue just up and quit. And the same scapegoating is going on today with Representative Omar. Well, the Jews just hypnotize the world, and that's why there's an Israel. And it's all about the Benjamins. Those rich Jews are just buying the electorate. And this is the beginning, and it doesn't end. It doesn't stop.
Right.
It doesn't stop with just rhetoric. It's going to get more and more ugly because we're not putting the hammer down. We're not, as a people, as a nation, saying, politics aside, I don't care who the politician is. You could get the most Republican of them all, and if he came out with crazy speak, it's time for him to resign. It's time. The party says, you've lost your mind. Maybe go see a psychologist or whatever, but you're done. You'll never win another election in our party again. You're gone. You need help. You are unfit for office. But the Democrats are drunk on power, and for whatever the reasons, and they're like, okay, well, whatever. She's winning elections, and Cortez is the future, and so I guess this is the road we're going to go. If we have problems, we're going to blame it on the Jews because that works. It works for Farrakhan. It gets us votes in Chicago, and apparently now it's going to get us votes in New York. And this is I'm telling you, we are in for a new dark age. If this isn't stopped by 2020, by the next election cycle, if all the people who are coming out with this crazy speak, if they aren't just shut down and out of office, we will be going into.
It's going to snowball. It's going to snowball,
and we will enter a new dark age. And I'm not looking forward to it. And I've already made the commitment. There's this funny comedian. He does this whole shtick without wearing a shirt. And he talks about going to Russia and he's the machine and this and another thing. And he's hanging out with the Russian mafia. And then he stops in the middle of his presentation. He's on the train now with he's with a college group. They're on touring and now they're on the train and he's with the Russian mafia that controls the trains. And he's drinking all night and then the Russian mafia guy goes, hey, let's go steal the money out of the till for the liquor. And he's like, hey, okay, I'll take the money because I'm with these are mafia guys. They get what they want. And then he stops and said, I will never have an affair with my wife. He said, a long time ago, I was sitting on a bed with my wife and my kids, and I realized I don't ever want to mess this up. I just don't ever want. He says, so I'm out on the road doing tours, and even if I think a girl is hitting on me, I'll look her in the eyes and scream, I love my wife, right? He said, and that way I'm not going to do it. He said, I never had a conversation with myself about what should I do if I'm ever tempted with robbing a train? Because then it goes to the Russian mafia. It's like, hey, let's rob all of the passengers, including your American college tourists. And he's like, okay, sounds like a good idea, because he didn't think it through beforehand, right? So it was a funny little thing. But my point being is, we as a society should have already had this conversation with ourselves.
Right.
I have made the decision. I have often asked myself, what would I have done if I was living in Nazi Germany and my Jewish neighbor came knocking on my door with his wife and kids and saying they're coming to get me, and knowing that if I gave him refuge, they may take me away too. What will I have done? And I said, you know what? The consequences be damned. I would take him in. You know what? I would rather die with my Jewish cousin than to say, yeah, well, you better run even faster because I'm going to call and so they know that I'm not guilty either, right? You have to have these conversations with yourself before they even come up, so you know how to handle it. And as a nation, we haven't had that conversation because it's coming up and people are caught off guard. They don't understand what's going on, and they're looking at the math and say, but these people are winning elections, so I guess this is what we're going. They're drifting in to extreme danger, and it breaks my heart as an American that we can't put party aside and just say no, this is evil. It's got to go. Right? Watch the Democrats are applauding. They're making excuses for people who have done blackface. They're making excuses for people. Just because they're drunk on power. And could you imagine? Well, it is late, and I'm repeating myself. if this was interesting, people comment in the comments. If this is interesting, I have a full presentation of the history of Israel from the creation of time to now with a slideshow presentation. If people are interested, if we get
I
through,
would love to. Let's do a whole video on that. Let's
we
do a
can do it.
whole video on that.
I'll shoot you the PowerPoint, and then we can just go through the slides, and I'll do it from we start from recorded time, the Hittites, right, and we work it all the way up, and much more in depth with well, it's much more in depth and we'll have maps explaining the whole thing. But
let's do that. Let's do that next week. Let's do that next week.
Okay, it's a deal. I'll email you the PowerPoint sometime in the next couple of days, and then we'll just do it next week.
But really quickly, just I wanted to ask you, sure. Do you think, just one really quick thing, do you think that pulling out of Syria was a good thing, or at least that when Trump said that he wanted to pull out of Syria, all the BS, all the leftists are saying that we should be there. What were your thoughts on that? On pulling out of Syria?
It's the left. Yeah, well, it's not. The left will say whatever, right? We had to pull out of Iraq.
Trump, so whenever Trump said anything, they would just be against that.
Exactly. I saw. Well, I saw. I'm not sure if I said this before, but I saw a meme. Of a crying liberal with a plastic bag over their head, and it said, Trump's likes air. So, and then right. Shortly thereafter, it was a news story. Trump said, "Hey, these regimes that kill homosexuals, we have to, like Iran, for example, we've got to do something to make them stop killing gays." And a gay magazine said, "That's racist." It's like, right? So, but the Democrats.
And that was a real thing, or that was a meme?
Oh no! The meme was Trump likes air, and I'm going to put a bag on
right. Oh, okay.
It was there is a real pro homosexual magazine. Trump really would say Iran. We need to put pressure on Iran, so it's no longer legal to murder homosexuals in Iran. And a pro homosexual magazine said Trump is racist for wanting Iran to stop murdering gays.
They're so stupid. Right? They're so stupid.
Yeah. So whatever the Democrats say, I don't care, because it's just whatever they think is going to hurt Trump. Right? There's no serious analysis. But for Syria, I'm torn. I'm all for killing ISIS anywhere they show up. I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And
his argument was like, because they were giving him crap about it. He's like, there's always going to be pockets. He's like, you can never like all eradicate everybody, because he could have just killed all of ISIS in that area, but then there would still be people who would rise up and
I'm with you.
Place. So I know, I just found it really interesting that he said that. He's like, there's always going to be pockets of things, and one of the biggest points that he made about that was really interesting was he says, sorry, but we can't, why don't they, it's their own region. Why don't they do something about it? Yeah. But he gave him the help. He's like, help him. I'm going to help you out. Now you guys take care of your own region. Like it's,
exactly.
Exactly. It was very, empowering to hear that.
I haven't followed it closely. As long as we are giving the Yazidis and the Kurds, all of them, they're willing to fight for themselves. So as long as we're supplying them with enough guns and bullets, and more guns and more bullets, so that they can defend themselves, I think they're fine. We can pull up, because as long as the Yazidis and the Kurds have the arms, they'll defend. They're not asking anybody to fight for them. They're just asking for the means to defend themselves. And so, my only concern was that we were going to leave our allies, the Yazidis and the Kurds, in the lurch. But as long as, and I haven't seen any reports of Kurds being overrun, or the Yazidis either. So I think he handled it well. Believe it or not, Trump has really redefined a lot of thinking, because of Trump has made good arguments. He's
great.
It is. When he said, the NATO, none of the NATO members are paying their obligation for the NATO costs. They're not doing it. We've been flipping the bill. We've been carrying the load all by ourselves. And then Trump said, "Why are we defending Germany against Russia when Germany is doing a multi-billion-dollar pipeline with Russia? Russia's no." And this isn't Russia. This is the Germans are doing business with the Russians. Why are we why do we have this antiquated model of, having to fight back the Russians who might invade and take over? They're not invading; they're doing business. And
Yeah,
so that's the Germans have got to come to grips. Do you want an alliance with us to protect you against Russia, or is Russia not a fear, and you're going to do business with them?
yeah,
And we're, hey, guess what? We're not fascist totalitarians. We're giving you the freedom to choose. You choose who you want to do business with. And if you don't want to, and if you want to do business with the Russians, well, then the Russians aren't anything to be worried about. And I thought, wow, I can't argue against that thinking. And I'm a child of the Cold War. He could have, without thinking, it's like, oh yeah, we have to beef up Germany against the Russian stuff. I would have been, yeah, because I was trained that way my whole life. But I've never heard anyone make that observation before. And it's like, he's got a point. He's got a point, and I'm sick and tired of flipping the bill for, Germany has their elaborate welfare system because they don't have to worry about defense because they know we're there. Well, maybe they ought to chip in to their military defense and pay us some money, or maybe we need to take that off our obligation and cut back on our spending so we have more for us.
yeah.
And that's my, so I have Trump across the board has exceeded all of my wildest dreams, and
Yeah, mine too.
yeah. So
Last but not least, do you think that do you think he has a chance in 2020? I just think there's so many people, because I mean, from what I've read, it's like there's a lot of people that are actually just disappointed because he didn't get the wall done. But it's like, what are you gonna do? So you're just gonna vote for Beto?
yeah,
So
no,
anyway, just silly that people are saying that they're not going to vote for him. People are saying Ann Coulter is going to run. Do you think that Trump actually has a chance of actually winning in 2020?
yeah.
I think that there's a big chance that he won't. I don't know. Do you think that it's just hands down no, like he's definitely going to be elected, or what do you think?
Anything can happen, but I think of all of the lunatics that have announced that they're running for the Democrats, and I can't think of one who I would say, I could sleep at night if that person won. I can't think of one. If Joe Lieberman came out of retirement and were to run, he would be booed off the Democrat stage. Joe Lieberman, it's like we can agree on we can disagree on a lot of things, but at least I know he loved America and was concerned about Western civilization and keeping America safe. I can't say that about any of them, right? And so I think Trump is the only one who would be able to defeat them because, I mean, he's not afraid. He's redefined that. He's not afraid to call crazy, and not be polite and say it,
And it's a shame because it makes it worse because they're so inflammatory that they just let everything fly off the handle. But it makes you wonder if he was more calm, if they would actually. It makes you wonder if they would actually get things done, or if they would just be total idiots. I think that it drives the left so crazy because he's not willing to bow. But anyway, it just makes you wonder if he was different. It makes you wonder if they wouldn't have exposed themselves. As a result, they've exposed themselves for being the crazy socialists that they are. The crazy people who want this entire country. They want the Constitution to end. They want this entire country destroyed. And it's like Trump has basically exposed them.
Yeah, exactly. And because of that, I mean they've doubled down on crazy, and he's just the guy.
But I think there's so many people that don't see that though. So many people just see it's so crazy because the reason why I say that is because I play gigs that are just random colleges and places, and these are young people, and all these people are brainwashed into thinking he's a bad person, and it's like. You do really you do realize that he's actually protecting your rights. Like if he wasn't here protecting your rights, you would be toast. Your whole way of life would be gone.
Right.
Anyway, it's so crazy.
Yeah. No, I think whoever. I mean, I don't know who. I mean, there's a lot of nutballs running, and there's going to be more entering. And
because we got Bernie, we've got what's his name? Beto and Bernie.
Beto, Bernie, Hickenlooper. Hickenlooper might be the most the most centrist of them all. But Hickenlooper's going to get crucified because when he's going to run on, because he's out of Colorado, he's going to say, "Look at what I did to Colorado." It's like, well, yeah, you were fracking. You're a fossil fuel guy, so he'll be crucified on the cross of pro fossil fuels, and because blessed be Saint Cortez, she just you can't do that. Her plan is to get rid of fossil fuels in the last 12 years, and if you're not on board with that, you want the planet to be killed. It's crazy speak.
Yeah.
And so I think whoever gets it, Trump is just gonna eviscerate them. And
But part of me thinks that there's so many people that just don't see. Anyway, I just think it'll be a close election. Whatever happens, it'll be close. I don't think it'll be. I mean, I want it to be a landslide. I want him to just destroy, because he's done such a great job that he deserves to just totally landslide him.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a lot closer than we think, and I think there's going to be a lot of losses. I don't know. That's just part of my.
Well,
What percentage do you think that he actually has a chance of winning? What percentage? Would you say 50 or 60 or 70? You're just a wild guess. Just
wild guess. 75.
75.
Yeah.
Okay. Sweet.
I mean, think about this. The full court press every day since even before the election, the narrative from all outlets is he's, Orange Man bad, right?
Right.
It's been Orange Man bad for over 2 years, all day, every day, and twice if they suspect something. I remember one of those like, oh, news bomb, some webpage, this testimony is going to destroy Trump. Well, it turns out everything's a lie, right? But they're willing to report anything, and then have to retract it. That's how desperate the media is to destroy Trump. And they've been doing that for as long as they have, and his approval ratings are in the high 40s, like 49%. It's like, are you kidding me? Any other president who had gone through that kind of barrage, they should be single digits. But people are getting enough. People, it's like they're sick and tired of the lies. They're sick and tired of stuff being made up. And if it turns out that Mueller really has the goods on Trump, he really did break the law, well then, okay, he's going to lose. But Mueller's going to come out, and he's going to, and the Democrats say, oh, 19 convictions. Well, not one, not a single one of the 19 convictions has anything to do with Russia. They're all procedural crimes. They're all crimes that were discovered because they were being investigated, because it was thought there was collusion with the Russians. And this is what is truly disturbing. Someone on a national level needs to point this out. It used to be in the Justice Department was, if you are suspected of a crime, we're going to investigate you of that crime. And then if there's proof, we're going to, beyond a reasonable doubt, and the jury convinced, well, then you're guilty. It was under Soviet Russia where the mantra of show me the man and I will find the crime. But that's where we are with Trump. There is no burden of proof. It's just like, the Justice Department, the Mueller crew, they have gone through everybody who's ever done any business with Trump at all, and they've looked through everything. And okay, this guy made a mistake on his taxes here, and this guy gave me misleading statements there, and I've got 19 convictions of nothing to do with Russia. And under normal circumstances, hey, if an investigation goes on, I'm looking for something and I find something completely else, but it's called a fishing expedition. If I went out fishing for a bass and I caught a northern pike, the judge would say, you found that illegally, you got to throw the pike back into the lake, and you got to let it go. Right? The fruit from the forbidden tree. You discovered that unjustly. Your search warrant didn't cover that. Therefore, you can't use that evidence. That's how it used to be. But now, Mueller's just, I'm going to find anything I can. And what he's been trying to do is going to a 70-something-year-old person and say, do you want to spend the rest of your life in jail, or are you going to give us something on Trump? We'll take anything you can give us. And the guy, out of loyalty, or is like, I got nothing to say. I can't tell you that I know that Trump colluded with the Russians, because I don't know that. Yeah. And out of frustration, it's like, okay, well, I guess you're 70 and we're going to hit you with crimes
Then there was
I
that
mean,
stupid BuzzFeed thing. Remember that fake thing that came out and CNN ran with it?
yeah, BuzzFeed, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that
And
was such
so
a horrible thing, man.
Trump should be single digits popularity, and he's not. So that tells me when he is geared up, when he goes on the campaign trail, he's going to fire up the base. And all he has to do for the people who wanted the wall, he said, listen, I tried. I thought I'd get it done with the first years, but Paul Ryan stopped me. Thank you for getting rid of Paul Ryan. But now we lost the House. So send me back. Give me the House with people who I can work with, and we'll, and he's doing all he can do. He's went ahead and executive ordered it. So, I think Ann Coulter, I love her to death. She's witty. I love reading her stuff, but and but I haven't read her stuff in a long, long time. But the Never Trumpers, they're Never Trumpers. There's nothing you can do to say. I think in the final analysis, hopefully, between Candace Owen and her movement of trying to educate a demographic group that what has the Democrat Party done for you other than destroy the family and destroy every neighborhood that you have given them control over. Look at Detroit and Chicago. They've been voting Democrat for the past 70, 60 years, and those cities are destroyed, along with Baltimore,
Yeah.
along with, name San Francisco, right? You can throw the whole city or the whole state of California under the bus there. It's like that state has been governed has had a stranglehold by Democrats since 1990s, and they have killed the golden goose. They've gutted it. It's destroyed. You have cities declaring bankruptcy. But you go to the demographic cities that I'm talking about, and you ask that demographic, what have the Democrats done for you? And the answer is nothing, because they want you to be dependent. They want you needing welfare.
They want you to depend on nothing. They want you to depend on but never get anything, never arrive at anything.
As long as you're dependent on them, you will vote for them. Now, they're not requiring you to work and go pick cotton, but it's the same concept. You better do what I say, otherwise you're not going to get fed, and you're not going to get clothes, you're not going to have a place to stay. It's a plantation, and I've heard African Americans use that analogy. They're saying, I was a Democrat, I have escaped the plantation. And so if that movement continues to grow, even if 17-20%, if that you get the Democratic coalition's over with, it's broken, and now there's a movement of a Jew exit. I don't know how to, but Jews who are waking up saying, wait a second, this is the party. They are harboring anti-Semites in your face, not speaking in code, in your face, anti-Semites. As a Jewish person, what the hell am I doing in this party? And if they could get just 10 or 50% of that diehard vote to go, the coalition's over with. But they're putting all their money in they're doubling down on the Islamic vote that's growing, and they're doubling down on their what they think is Latino vote, voting for them, and we'll see. But I have if he loses, it'll be a very dark time, because if he loses, then that means we will probably lose. The Democrats will keep the House. They'll probably get the Senate, and then you'll see absolute insanity being enacted. Repeal the Second Amendment, and housing and medicines are right. Everything's are right. I've heard one elected official out of California saying, well, we've got this crazy model of people have too much of their own space. We need to use an Asian model where you have 3 generations living in one home. Right? It's like you can't have your own house. That's not going to work here. We've got too many people. So the state is going to start saying, no, do what you got to do, but figure out which family members are going to sell their houses, and you're all going to consolidate into one home. It sounds like crazy speak. I've heard other like Jesse Jackson, other people saying, we don't have, we're 20 trillion in the hole. It's like, no, we're not. We've got the money. And they're talking about people's 401ks. The money's there. So people are already talking about, all we got to do is just nationalize people's 401ks, and we could pay off our debt. And you don't worry about your 401k. We'll guarantee it. When you go to retire, we'll just you'll get Social Security. And so the mindset is there on the left, but it's no longer people talking secretly or, kind of whispering. They're talking openly. Bernie Sanders is talking, all the stuff that he's had in his head for the past 20 years, he's now saying openly. And that very well may be. And, it's going to be, this isn't going to be Hillary again, where, Bernie is engineered out of the elections. It's going to be a free-for-all. And I think the other party, the other guys, Booker and Camilla and everyone else knows it. So they're all trying to say, they're all trying to, who's farther to the left than you? You can't get me. I'm farther to the left than you. And hopefully they go off the edge, because they're going to lose. There are some Democrats who do work for a living, but they're not rich like Barbara Streisand. Bernie Sanders, what he's wanting to do, I want health care like there is in Switzerland. Well, how does Switzerland pay for that? And his response was, well, we're going to hit Bezos. Well, you take everything Amazon's worth, and hits $5 billion or whatever, and that may fund a day or two of the federal government. You're going to need way more than that. And how Sweden does what they do, and again, they're not balancing their budgets, but what they are at now is middle class. If you make $60,000 a year, you're taxed at 60%. That's over half. You make $60,000 a year, you get to keep less than 30, and that's Sweden.
That's so ludicrous.
It's ludicrous, and so all you need is a straight talking someone like Trump to point that out, and
they just don't think about that. They don't think that, oh yeah, if you tax more, that means people are going to actually work less because they want to make less, so that they don't have to pay less taxes.
Exactly.
They don't understand that. It's like you don't get what you're doing. You're actually making people work less, so there's less productivity, so that it actually depletes everything, because there's less work going on and less money. It's the stupidest thing. How do these people think that they're going to continuously like if I was like a millionaire, or even something not close, let's say I made $500,000 a year or something, and I'm like some CEO, or maybe I'm just like a big shareholder in a company, and I just I do my thing, whatever. I'm an entrepreneur, and I help young people develop their own things and develop apps and start their own companies, and I help them by investing in them, and they create their business, and small business becomes good, and technology is excels, and it's propelled and exceeds, and then you have someone else come along, and the government tells you that you're literally going to be taxed most of it what you make. You literally tell yourself, okay, I'm going to sell stock and move, or I'm not going to make any. It's like you literally change the course of your life to make less than. Like, and it's just, they're not going to just say, oh, okay, I guess I'll pay taxes, and then make the same amount. There's going to be just less money made, period. Yep. And so it's going to go all around. They're just so stupid.
Here's a little history for you. I don't know if you know this, so I'll just start. The concept of the employer paying your health care and your dental care, that became commonplace in the 1940s, because we were in a World War II, and the government said, hey, we have got to put caps on what you can pay people, because everything's got to go towards the war effort. So there was an actual cap on what employers could offer people to come work for them. So one employer came with it and said, hey, I'll pay you the max I can pay you, and I'll pay your health care. And on competitions, like, oh, well, I'll pay what the max, I'll pay you health care, and I'll throw in dental. And it was because the government put caps on income that it became standard for companies to say, well, I'll take care of health insurance, right? It was a result of trying to say, hey, this guy's worth it. I want him to come work with me. So here's your max, and then so what will happen is, they may come up with other ways, other incentives. Hey, hey, the magic number is we want to pay you more than 500,000, but if you do, and they'll come up with other things. Like, how about we'll give you I'm not, a $500,000 car, right? We'll give you one of those every other year as a bonus, right? It's not income, but I'm not a tax guy, but there's two ways to counter it. You either find a way around it, or like you said, it's like, well, I'll work less because actually I can make more money by working less, because once I cross a magic number and now I'm being taxed at 90%, while my take home is whatever. Let's say my take home is now 70,000. Well, if I stop working, if I stop my pay at 90,000, and then I get taxed down to 70,000 at a different tax bracket, well, my quality of life is the same, except for I'm working less hours. So I guess I can kill myself and make 70,000, or I can work less and make 70,000. But that's in the final analysis. You're right. The incentive has gone to work harder, and people will. That's the mark. What they don't understand, I honestly, and I listened to Cortez, I honestly believe they don't understand how economics works. I think Cortez thinks, well, we just print more money. What's the problem? We'll just print more money. And she doesn't understand that money is a representation of the value, right? And if you print more money, well, you're devaluing the currency. And you know what? It's been done. It's been tried several times. It was tried in the Weimar Republic, which was Germany after World War I and before the Nazis took over. And they figured, hey, well, we have to pay back for World War. Because so remember how we talked about how the Franco-Prussian War comes to an end, and the Germans say to the French, "You're responsible. You have to pay for everything." Well, World War I comes to an end, and the French are the winning side, and they tell the Germans, "You're responsible because you guys were born, and you have to pay for everything. Every house that was ruined, you have to pay for it, and you have to pay punitive costs too." And it was so much money, Germany could never pay it off. And they figured at one point they said, "Well, we'll just start printing money." And you have stories of people have wheelbarrows filled with million-mark notes. So they have hundreds of millions of marks, and they have to carry the amount of money in a wheelbarrow to go buy a loaf of bread. And the classic story is a guy, he steps away, comes back, and someone had dumped the money and just stole the wheelbarrow. They left the money and took the wheelbarrow. And you think, oh, okay, well, that was the 1920s and 30s, and well, it's happening. It happened in Zimbabwe, right? It's happening in Venezuela. When the government's response is, well, we're going to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour, like Bernie Sanders says. Well, what happens then? When I was a kid, the minimum wage was $4.20, $4.25. When I was a kid, you could go to Taco Bell and you could buy a beef burrito for 39 cents. Right? Gas was 70 cents a barrel, or 70 cents a gallon. Right? So the bottom line is, movies were $3 maybe, $2, $2.50. All right, and that's prime times, first release Friday night, $2.50. But we've increased the minimum wage now. Depending on what state you're in, it's $8, $9, $10, yeah. Right? And guess what? A Big Mac in 1987. Once a week or so, it was Wednesdays. It was a Big Mac attack. You get a Big Mac for $1. $1. Well, Big Mac today by itself is close to $5, right? Your buying power remains the same. If it cost me an hour's work to go see a movie, movie and a popcorn in 1987, because I was getting paid $4.25 for minimum wage. Well, it's going to cost you an hour's work plus or minus for a movie and a popcorn now. It's because the ticket's $12 and $3 or $4 for a small bag of popcorn.
Yeah, they don't realize that just everything goes up. It doesn't matter.
Everything goes up.
Everything is going to go up, and plus you're going to put all, and it's like, oh, I'm for small business. No, you're not. You're just destroying small business by doing that, because small businesses can't affard it.
Exactly.
So
well,
it's stupid.
And the ones that can are the ones that say, well, I have to increase my. So the 39 cents Taco Bell beef burrito, it went from 39 cents to now it's $1.25, because as you increase what you have to pay the workers, you have to increase the cost of the item that you're selling, be it beef burritos, be it movie tickets, be it a house. The cost goes up for everything. Minimum wage will still, you could say $15 an hour is a livable wage. Well, it won't be when that becomes the standard for minimum wage. You don't even have a high school education, and I have to pay you $15 to flip a burger? Well, guess what? Cost of living's gone up, and then all of a sudden now $15 an hour is a non-livable wage. Well, if you want a livable wage, why not sit for $50 an hour? Why not $150 an hour? Right?
Yeah.
We want equality and fairness. Why doesn't everyone should be able to drive a BMW? Everyone should be able to live where the fancy lawyer lives. So why don't we increase the minimum wage to $500 an hour? Well, the answer is if you did that, everything will go up. Gas will go up to exponentially. Gas will now all of a sudden become, $600 a gallon, or whatever, right? It sounds good to the uneducated, to the morons, to the idiots, and to those who want to get. Well, you know what? Time magazine, when Obama won his second election, Time magazine wrote an essay saying Obama tapped into a group of voters who never voted for it. That's how he won. He tapped into, and I'm sure they did a lot of research to get this nice sounding thing. Obama tapped into the low information voter, and they came out in masses and voted for Obama. And that's why Mitt lost, because Obama tapped into the low information voter. And so
people who doesn't do research and doesn't know what's going on.
They're morons. They're absolute morons who say, "Oh yeah, $15 an hour minimum wage. That sounds great." They're morons. They're low information. They don't understand that they'll have the same buying power that they do today with minimum wage. You can increase minimum wage, but it's minimum wage. Everything else goes up. The union worker who's a journeyman. He's a master at his trade. Well, guess what? His rates have just gone up too, because he's not going to be getting paid $5-10 more than minimum wage. He's a master craftsman. His rates just went up. Your lawyer's rates just went up. Your doctor's rates just went up. The costs that the doctors of the tests that he has to do, they just went up. Everything just went up. And you have the same relative buying power as a minimum wage worker as you did before it was $10 an hour, and when it was $4.25 an hour. So Bernie's out there tapping into a bunch of morons, a bunch of low information voters, or true believers. They really think it's going to work, and they think that they're going to do it better than. I read an article yesterday. Venezuela, at the capital, Caracas, there are people who are getting their drinking water from sewer lines because it's coming out clear, and it's clear in the water in the river, right? And it's like that's socialism for you. Everything fails. Everything fails. Yeah. And you can for people out there, Google Bernie Sanders was hailing when Venezuela became socialist. He thought it was the greatest thing in the world, and that it's a model we should all follow. And now you bring it. No one will bring it up, because that'd be a very embarrassing question for Bernie to kind of tackle. And then if you can pin him down, he'll come back with the same thing. Well, they didn't do it right. They didn't try properly. Socialism hasn't been done properly. I just hope
that if Trump and Bernie are against each other, I just hope Trump brings that up.
Oh,
and says, "Oh yeah, by the way, he was always saying how great it was." And
no, so that's why I think Trump. They're running. If the Democrats would have come forward with their version of Mitt Romney, a clean cut, great background, moral character, unimpeachable, can't touch, and business savvy, maybe the Starbucks guy, he's talking about. I don't know him personally, but he would be a scary thing, because he's a leftist, he's a libtard, he's made a lot of money, but he's not crazy like Bernie Sanders or the rest of them, Beto or all of them. But the great encouraging news there is he came out and was talking about it, and the left was like, "Go to hell! You're a capitalist. We don't want you." I was like, "Oh, okay, good to hear." Right? So, the working class, those who pay taxes, are going to hear what Trump has to say, and then whatever lunatic the left puts forward, and I think Trump's going to win, and a distinct possibility. With the insanity of the House, I mean, Trump's going to be. I would be hammered away that you guys gave the House. You handed the gavel over to Nancy Pelosi, who is letting the anti-Semite monkeys run wild.
Yeah.
And if that's America, then that's America. But if it's not America, you got to go out there and you got to vote, and you got to vote to say no to racism, no to anti-Semitism, yes to the free market and your freedoms. But I got to go, dude.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks again. Have a great night. Bye.
Enjoy. Bye-bye.